fresh Henry Cavill smear just hit. And you know what? It makes him sound great. Excuse me, you want to ruin this show? No, 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 no. Let me, as someone who gives a shit, I'll tell you what to do here. Okay, let's see. Hold on. I recently got this message and somebody was like, quote, "Do you want to know what really went down?" And I was like, sure. So let me just read it. It says, quote, "At the beginning of the show, Henry was good to work with, a lot of unusual demands that made people feel like he wasn't really a team player. But that's not unusual for a big star. Though in TV, it truly usually doesn't happen until the second season. But in season 2 and 3, something shifted and he became really impossible for women to work with, which is always a big problem. But even worse here, because the showrunner is a woman, he would try to overrule her and try to get changes made last minute across the board without her knowledge, which, if you know anything about showrunning, is completely effed. The showrunner has to sign off on every minuscule detail down to the buttons on a costume. Female writers and directors were suddenly completely ignored on set, unable to do their jobs. Every department head was complaining. He started making comments. It wasn't a sexual thing. He wasn't grabbing anyone or being lewd, but it was just disrespectful and toxic all the time. Something to keep in mind here. What's come out after the fact and what seems to have gone down is that Henry became very frustrated that a lot of the writers and the showrunner, Lauren Hisrick, I think it is, they openly detest the source material from Andrzej Sapkowski, and they don't want to be true to that material. They want to kind of rework The Witcher in their own image, which Henry doesn't like, as somebody who's a big fan of the books and of the games, which were, of course, based on the books. He didn't like that. He wanted to be more true to the source material, and apparently that's what he thought he was signing up for. So this whole first paragraph seems to me like he was, like, this could be explained by him just disagreeing with the artistic direction of the showrunners and writers, a lot of whom, I think actually the majority of whom, were women. Is it because they're women? No, it's because they're openly, like, going against the source material. And they seem obsessed with telling stories about characters like Frangilla, who literally no one gives a crap about, but whatever. He goes on, he's deeply addicted to video games to the point where, oh, can you believe? God, what a pig. To the point where it was like working with any other addict. He was distracted. He was late. He was obsessive. And a lot of people think that the misogyny came from the gamer world. Came from gamer world. Again, like, I don't see how any of this, like, requires him to be a misogynist. If I disagree with you creatively and you happen to be female, I'm not disagreeing with you because you're female. I just disagree with you. Like, if I say, listen, I'm not going to let some woman tell me how to do my job, then yeah, that's pretty effed. But she does, like, this person is not even saying that happened. They're just like, yeah, he would, like, disagree with what we were doing. Okay, whatever. And this is starting to sound like the typical Tumblr rage post of, like, you know, lock up all men, eat men are toxic, down with the patriarchy. They like video games, you know. It's starting to sound that way. Video game bro language is not how you talk to coworkers. What? He wouldn't stop. Someone on the show compared it to watching Get Brainwashed by QAnon. So they're just throwing QAnon stuff in there? How is this anything? He likes video games. Video game bro language? What? I would love an example. You know what? I bet their version of, like, bro language is that he said, like, DPS at one point. He's like, yeah, this sword is really great. It's got a really high DPS, I bet. And they're like, oh my God, what a pig. Wow. Like, his whole personality shifted. Eventually his disrespect escalated. Okay, let's see how it escalated, because this is not at all convincing that there's anything going on. Do they really think that this makes them sound like the well-adjusted person? Maybe they do. Huh. Interesting. Okay, well, they go on. He would rewrite scenes without even alerting the other actors in the scenes until it was time to shoot. He decided that he didn't want any romantic scenes at all, no kissing, no shirtless scenes, etc. He wanted complete control of storylines, but really had no idea of the limitations of TV structure, budget, etc. He formed a weird alliance with one writer who was also a gamer, who eventually got fired after multiple HR complaints were made. And after that writer left, Henry did anything he could to hold up production and cause problems. Eventually, top brass at Netflix was tired of him, costing them money and with delays in HR investigations. And the showrunner was asked to construct a potential exit for him. Netflix reached out to him personally, and he was given one final warning and violated that warning with an email he sent to the entire writing staff after that meeting. That was it. For one, we don't know any of this is actually true. So just to be completely clear, we don't know any of this is actually true. This is all just like claims. Like all of this actually, I think just for fans of The Witcher, make him out to be probably like more of a hero, if I'm being real. It's blowing my mind that somebody would write this out thinking it makes them sound like the well-adjusted person in the conversation, because it really, like, it does not. This just comes off as somebody that was upset that he was coming along and disagreeing with their creative choices. And like, would I say it's professional? First of all, I don't believe that he was straight up rewriting scenes and then just doing that. Like, somebody who's saying that, it makes me take this a lot less seriously, because you can't just rewrite scenes. Maybe they're saying like he was redoing dialogue, like his lines slightly, so that he would say it in a different way that was more in line with Geralt. If that's what they mean by rewriting scenes, then again, there's no issue there. First of all, none of it sounds sexist, which is what they're trying to say. Like, they just throw out the casual thing. The misogyny got worse, you know? It's like, that was your argument for misogyny? Like, no, there's female writers and female staff. You gave no specifics of things he did specifically to the female writers or staff. You just said that he disagreed with them and was disrespectful by not agreeing with them going against the source material. He signed on thinking that they were going to be true to the source material, and then they weren't. So he was like, screw this. And then throwing out the QAnon thing, I don't know, that's weird to me. It's a text-to-speech from a podcast. Okay. I mean, that explains some of the weird, like, typos in it. I don't find this at all convincing or compelling that there's an actual problem. I don't see how this would possibly do anything. Completely ignored on set. If that's true, and if it is that he just, like, would not talk to female directors or writers, if that's true, he just, like, the male directors he'd respond to, the female directors he wouldn't, yes, that's a problem. And I would say, yeah, no, that's really messed up. And I would say that is cause for investigation and probably termination. It's just toxic. If I had an employee that was not talking to female staff, I'd fire them. Like, easy, no problem. Yeah, we're not doing that. But I don't know if, like, whenever there's a chance to offer specifics, they don't offer specifics. And then they just casually throw out random things like, you know, completely addicted to video games. And all of the misogyny came from the gamer world. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't find this at all compelling to think that, you know, cancel Henry. I don't find that compelling at all. I mean, it's kind of terrifying that somebody like him, if he rubbed somebody the wrong way, that they could just come out and accuse him of, like, all of these crazy sexist things. Like, this person basically is accusing him of. And that would go out on Twitter. People would call for his cancellation, and it could be totally untrue. And he would have, like, no recourse. It's pretty terrifying. He did famously rewrite one scene because the showrunner wanted to make the Roach death scene as a comedic moment. What? In both the Witcher books and the games, Roach is the name Geralt uses for his current horse. So when his current steed expires in the heat of battle or otherwise, he anoints a new mare with the title. The lore of it all makes the grisly death scene in The Witcher 2 feel layered. Killing off Roach is both an inside joke to fans who understand the circle of life and a truly gutting moment. I don't see how it's an inside joke. It's a reference to the lore, but I don't see how it's a joke. I don't know if I'd call it a joke. Like, if you have a character in your show who dies and then 3 days comes back, like, yeah, it's a reference to Christ's resurrection. Is that a joke? I don't think so. It's just a reference. It's a tie. Like, it doesn't make sense to call it a joke, but okay. What I think is amazing is your reaction is so standard from what I'm hearing. Hisrick tells me as I bemoan the death of Roach instead of asking her a question. We kill people, we kill humans all the time on our show, and people are like, how could you do that to Roach? She and the writing staff had their reasons. For one thing, horses don't live as long as humans, and, quote, we already had kind of pressed the boundaries of reality there. We knew that at some point Geralt was going to have to get a new Roach. The staff also didn't want Roach to die in vain, so they had to write in the Shunabog, one of the deadliest beasties in the Witcher universe, to tear the horse a new one. We wanted Roach to die on screen in a very heroic way. And Hisrick admits that when she first wrote the Roach death scene, her instinct was to puncture the moment with a bit of meta comedy. Henry Cavill pushed the moment to be more heartfelt. Eventually, Hisrick caved which she said was ultimately the right call. Henry was so unhappy with the line. She recalls, finally I said, you know what? You come up with something. I trust you. You know this material so well. You know the book so well. You don't even have to pitch it to me. He came back the next day with a beautiful speech that's at the end of Sword of Destiny, and Geralt is facing death, and it's such a perfect moment. Cavill's choice is simple but effective in his gravelly Geralt speak. He said, quote, enjoy your last walk across the meadow and through the mist. Be not afraid of her, for she is your friend. Yeah, I thought he loves each and every roach. Like, it's not like a funny thing. Well, there goes another one. I don't know. They don't say the line. He was so unhappy with the line. She wanted meta comedy. I don't know, man. The more I hear about the inner workings of the show, I'm kind of amazed that it came as long as it did. But it just seems like they got writers on the show that don't like the source material to write a show about the source material. And it's bizarre. Because they're just it's not the team to do it. I'm losing all interest in season 3 and 4. Because it just seems like all of their instincts were wrong. Like, I think that just trying to turn that into a funny moment feels like you just really don't understand Geralt. Which makes sense why Henry would be so like, no, I'm not going to say that line. That is bad. That's not in line with the character. It just doesn't make sense. It's not true to the source material. Like, are we trying to write a Family Guy bit, or are we trying to write a show based off these books? It's weird how people pride themselves on not knowing the media they're replicating, like Halo or The Last of Us show, not trying to knock them, just pointing them out. Well, the difference is, like, with the difference, Sharky, is that with The Last of Us show, I don't know the Halo show, so I'm not going to talk about that one, but for The Last of Us, they specifically asked the actors not to play the first game. And not to watch videos on it, not to do anything like that. Because they didn't want them to come in with ideas of what the characters needed to do and say, they didn't want, in effect, like a carbon copy of what the game version of those characters was. So they asked them to come in and bring a fresh perspective, and that's what they did. But the writers of The Last of Us did play the game, do know the story. Of course, like Neil Druckmann, who wrote the first game, was heavily involved in the writing, and even he directed an episode of The Last of Us show. I think that it's just different. What we have here is players or actors who were familiar with the source material, who had read the books, or at least Henry. I don't know if I've heard any of the other actors say that they read the books or anything. And it's probably because they were told, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do something different. And it sucks because they got a ton of hype from all of this when the show first launched, but step after step, time after time, they keep screwing it up. He took my thing.